Recording.
So last time we finished by recalling some notion about abelian category, additive and abelian category. So we will continue a bit this summary about abelian category today, and then we will have enough defined notion to understand the definition of multitensor category we gave last time. So let's start by recalling the notion of kernel and co-kernel. So let's see, be an additive category. F from X to Y morphism. So we will define the kernel and the co-kernel of the morphism F. So this will be a definition, this will be a categorical definition which will generalize the notion of kernel and co-kernel from vector space. So it's a definition which is purely categorical. We don't need space. We don't need set. So the kernel, and here we will have a definition requiring universal property. So the kernel kerf of F, if it exists, so it's not always, it does not always exist, is an object K. So it's given by a couple, an object and a morphism, and a morphism small k from k to what? To x, such that the composition of f and k is 0, and satisfying the following universal property. So we need a universal property. Universal property. So, what is this universal property? The following. So you have, we already have x and y and f, so we have that. We already have k and the morphism k. What this universal property is saying that if you have another couple k prime and k prime with the same properties as k, then there must be an extra morphism L covering k. So you, in other words, for all couple as above, there exists a morphism L from k prime to k, such that we recover k prime by composition with L. So the couple K, capital K is universal in that sense. This is universal property. So it is called the kernel when it exists. So if it exists, then it is unique up to a unique isomorphism. So this is, in this book, they like to write such sentence, unique up to unique isomorphism. So same thing for the co-kernel, the dually. The co-kernel coker F. So this is exactly as before. So as above, but by reversing every arrow. So you draw exactly the same thing as above, but you reverse every arrow. So what you have, you see, so you have a couple, you replace, you have couple K for kernel, and for co-kernel, couple C, capital C, small c. And C from Y to C, you see it reversed, K from K to X, and here C from Y to C. Such that you have C composed with S is 0, and with universal property, so universal property again, where every arrow are reversed. So you have X, Y, F, C, C, and if there is another one, so C prime, then there is L, recovering C prime. So another word for all C prime as above. Yeah, there exists L from C to C prime, capital C prime, such that the composition of L and small c is a small c prime. So it's also, if it exists, it's like that. And again, if it exists, it is unique up to a unique isomorphism. Same thing. Okay. So we have the notion of kernel and co-kernel defined by this universal property. And this really mimic what we have in for vector space and linear maps. So okay. So now this is what we need to define what is an abelian category? So we know what is an additive category, but what is an abelian category? The notion of abelian category need kernel and co-kernel to be defined. Okay. So, definition. An abelian category is an additive category C in which in which every morphism decomposes as follows using kernel and co-kernel, in which for every morphism phi from X to Y, there is a sequence. So you have this morphism phi from X to Y. So you have X and you have Y here. And you will put here the co-kernel, here the kernel, but we want something else in the middle, the image I, J. So this is called the canonical decomposition of the morphism phi. And such that so we have 3 points. The composition of J and I should recover phi. So this should be phi. Second point. Now the second and the third point will be about kernel and co-kernel. So K is a kernel of phi. So this is okay. That we already know. This is a co-kernel. So the new part here is that we want this to be the co-kernel of K. So the co-kernel of the morphism in the kernel of phi. And IJ will be the kernel of C, the kernel of the co-kernel morphism. So such I is called the image. So I, in fact, not such. I is called the image of the morphism phi and denoted image of phi. So the image of phi. So you see, everything is abstract. There is no. We don't need this object to be set or to be vector space. It's purely abstract. This is in that sense, the theory is strong. So now we will define the notion of monomorphism and epimorphism using kernel and co-kernel vanishing. And this notion will generalize the notion of surjective map and injective map. And in fact, you should be careful because in such generality, if I remember properly, there is several possible generalization of the notion of injective or surjective map. So this one is just one possible generalization. It's called monomorphism and epimorphism. Let C be an abelian category. A morphism. So you have the morphism F from X to Y is called monomorphism is the kernel is 0. So this corresponds to generalized notion of injective map, epimorphism, if the co-kernel of F is 0, generalizing the notion of surjective map. Okay. Now, how to generalize the notion of subobject, subset, subobject, but we don't have a set. So what is a subobject? A subobject of an object Y is an object X together with a monomorphism. Monomorphism I from X to Y. So like an injection. Denoted like that. The usual inclusion notation, but be careful, X and Y are not set. It's just a notation. You define the notion of quotient in the same way. This is a dual notion using epimorphism. A quotient of Y is an object Z together with an epimorphism. With an epimorphism, morphism P from Y to Z. So it's like a surjection. Okay, so now we can define a quotient from the subobject. In fact, in some sense, in the vector space analogous, this is the complement subspace. So you take a subobject. So then the quotient Z equal X over Y notation again. This is just a notation. There is no so is defined as the co-kernel of the monomorphism A from X to Y given by the subobject. So it's basically the complement subspace quotient. Generalize notion of quotient. The orthogonal subspace. The orthogonal of a space, the subspace. Okay. So, okay, but again, this is purely abstract. There is no space required here. Now, what about the notion of simple and semi-simple object? An object X non-zero in a category C, abelian category, is called simple this notion of simple object is really, really important. If 0 and X are its only subobject up to isomorphism. And it is called semi-simple if it is a direct sum of simple objects. If it is a direct sum of simple object, and we already defined the notion of direct sum last time. Simple object. And finally, an abelian category C is called semi-simple if all its objects are semi-simple. Are semi-simple. And we are mainly interested in semi-simple category in our research. That's why, as I said last semester, I am much more comfortable with semi-simple abelian category than non-semi-simple one. So in this course, sometime we will mention some notion about non-semi-simple category, but it's only because I cannot avoid them. I'll try to avoid as much as possible to mention non-semi-simple or to use non-semi-simple category. Sometimes I have no choice. So Schur's lemma. So this Schur's lemma is a very famous lemma about simple objects and homomorphism, offset between simple objects, saying that you have an offset between two simple objects. If the two simple objects are equivalent, isomorphic, then if they are not isomorphic, then the offset should be 0. Otherwise, it should be a division algebra, which means that otherwise, every morphism between two simple objects should be an isomorphism, except the 0. So so you take two simple objects. of an abelian category. You take a morphism in this is a Hom set between X and Y. And you assume this morphism to be non-zero. Then, if it is non-zero, then F is an isomorphism. So a morphism between two simple objects is either zero or an isomorphism. There is no intermediate case. In particular, if if the two objects are not isomorphic, then they should have no non-zero morphism by definition. Must be zero. There is no choice. Else, which means that if the two objects are isomorphic, then every non-zero element are isomorphic, so invertible. So this form with the addition and composition, a division algebra is a division algebra. So this generalized division algebra, so I will not define what is here, is just a non-commutative generalization of the notion of field. In particular, if it is commutative, then it's a field. So you can say the not necessarily commutative field. So, okay. So this is fundamental result. Schur's lemma. So definition. What about now? Notion of finite. Finite. So three definitions about finiteness. So a semi-simple abelian. And you remember the definition of multi-tensor category, we use some notion of finiteness. And in fact, we also use a notion of semi-simple. So now we know what semi-simple means. So we will define like that most, or even every new notion as as expected. So, so a semi-simple abelian category is called finite this is easy only if it has finitely many simple objects up to isomorphism. If it has only finitely many simple objects up to isomorphism. So up to mean that there is finitely many isomorphism class of simple objects. So we are mainly interested in what time is it? We are mainly interested in finite category. So what about now the notion of finite length of an object? So this notion of finite length is related to Jordan-Holder theorem in group theory, where simple object here plays the role of simple group. So there is kind of universal way to generalize the Jordan-Holder theorem. So we will mention just this definition here. So let X, you have an object in an abelian category. So an object has finite lengths. If there is a sequence, so you start from 0 and you take a sequence of sub-objects up to x, up to the object x. And every intermediate quotient are simple. So you have a sequence of inclusion like that, sub-object. Well, it's not really inclusion because it's not set. Subject, to be precise, such that the quotient, as we defined before, the quotient given by a sub-object is simple. If there is a finite sequence, so n is finite. If there is a sequence, n is finite sequence. So such a sequence is qualified as Jordan-Holder. It's a Jordan-Holder sequence. Jordan-Holder sequence. Okay. And the last definition about finiteness, the notion of locally finite abelian category, K-linear abelian category. Okay. Definition. The K-linear abelian category C is called locally finite and this notion of locally finite is related to finite length. So if there is 2 points, so first point, the Hom space every Hom space is finite dimensional K vector space for all object X and Y. And second point, every object is of finite. Every object in C has finite length. Okay. So next definition will be about direct sum of additive or abelian category. And the last definition before re-mentioning the definition of tensor category, where all the new notion will be then defined. So the last definition we need is the notion of indecomposable, requiring the notion of direct sum of category. So the last two definitions before coming back to tensor category. So this one is a direct sum. So you have be a family of additive, respectively abelian. What time is it? Okay. Category. So the direct sum. The direct sum. Si. So this direct sum is the additive, respectively abelian category with object. So as you can expect, in fact, there is no ambiguity here. The object like that, where this is here. The only assumption is almost all zero. Almost all zero, which means all zero up to finitely many. So it's a diagram of zero objects up to finitely many. And again, the morphism, as expected, the morphism like that is exactly the direct sum. So recall that in the additive category, the OMSET is a structure of group and in okay. So it's a direct sum in the sense of group. And definition. Now we can define the notion of indecomposable we need in the definition of tensor category. An abelian category C is called indecomposable if in the sense that if you can decompose it like that, then the first or the second must be zero, exactly as for prime number or primitive element, in fact, if you want to be more precise, or prime number, anyway. Okay, so this is the end of the first recall. End of first recall on abelian category. So now we can redefine the notion of multi-tensor category, fusion category, and now all the notion will be defined, will be known. So let us now mention the definition of multi-tensor category. Because all the new notions are now defined. But in my opinion, it was good to mention this definition before, because I did the dictionary with fusion ring, and it's good for intuition. So let K be an algebraically closed field. Algebraically closed field. Maybe I did not mention that before. So I will just rewrite. So let C be a locally finite, so that we know what it is. K linear, we know. Abelian, rigid, we know. Monoidal, we know. Category, we know. So locally finite, K-linear, abelian, rigid, monoidal category. It is called a multi-tensor category over K if the bifunctor the tensor bifunctor is bilinear on morphism. And we saw before, no, we will see, we don't saw yet, we will see that this additional assumption, bilinear on morphism, is not redundant, because even you can have example with all the previous property without that. We will mention that later. So it is called indecomposable. So that we know if it is not equivalent. So that I already defined indecomposable. Anyway, it is not equivalent to a direct sum of non-zero multi-tensor category. Okay. I defined intercomposable before for abelian category, and here for multi-tensor category, so this is more or less the same. It's not equivalent to a direct sum of non-zero multi-tensor category. So we cannot say indecomposable as abelian category, because here that should be abelian category. We need indecomposable in the sense of multi-tensor category, so that's why we need to restate that. Okay. but we know what is a direct sum. Now, okay. So this is fine. So if in addition you have the morphism from one to itself, which is one-dimensional, so isomorphic to the field, then it is called a tensor category. The title of the book. But we are, in fact, mainly interested in some specific tensor category, the semi-simple one, finite semi-simple. A multi-fusion category. Multi-fusion category is a finite semi-simple. So we know what is finite, we know what is semi-simple now. Multi-tensor category. And then, as I said, by Shur-Lemma, we mentioned before, this is equivalent to the unit object to be simple object. So that should be not in this color. I will not go. Okay. So let us make the pause now. Okay. So few example. The main usual example of tensor category. Here are the usual example of tensor category. And by usual, I mean the one you meet in the literature, or the easiest one over a field. This is the one usual in the sense, the one you can meet easily. This does not mean that all the tensor category look like that. In fact, the kind of random tensor category will not at all look like that. These usual examples are very specific. This is the one we can easily meet. So the trivial tensor category, VEC, of finite dimensional K vector spaces. This is a tensor category. The category of representation, finite dimensional K vector space representation of a group J, and the rep J omega finite dimensional k-vector spaces which are G-graded with associativity constraint given by omega. With associativity constraint given by omega. Okay, so this is usual. Among this usual, in the sense of easy, tensor category, VEC is a fusion category, the trivial fusion category. If G is a finite group, then VEC G omega is a fusion category. You know, in the notion of fusion category, we need some finiteness assumption. And it's not always true for rep G. Rep G is fusion if the characteristic of the field is 0 or co-prime with the order of G. So this is the first surprise here. Example. Else. It can be non-semi-simple. So you have example of non-semi-simple rep G. When the characteristic of the field divide or is not co-prime with the order of the group. En general. Okay. So this is friendly, this is easy. Example of tensor category, fusion category. Most of them come from group. Most of them are integral, fusion ring. But most of the tensor category don't look like that. This is very important to understand that these examples are not at all representative of the richness, the diversity of the notion of fusion category. This is just the usual example. Okay, so now we can start to summarize the last semester session 15. And in last semester session 15 we started with the notion of exactness. Exactness of the tensor product. And for so, we will again need to recall some definition from Abelian category. Exactness of the tensor product. In a multi-tensor category. So again, we need to provide some to define some notion from abelian category. So we will again recall some notion from abelian category about exactness. So definition. So the notion of exactness can be defined at the level of abelian category. It is related to sequence of morphism. So let's see be an abelian category a sequence of morphism. So you have a sequence of morphism like that, maybe infinite. Xi, Fi, Xi plus 1, etc. is called exact. Exact in degree I. If the image as defined before. So this is this will be about so this will be here. You have to focus here. So if the image of Fi minus 1 is equal to the kernel of Fi. This is exact in degree I. Exact here. So the image is the kernel here. So this sequence is called exact if it is exact everywhere. It is called exact if it is exact in every degree, everywhere. So we often consider short exact sequence. So short exact sequence, these are sequence like that. So you have 3 objects and you have some 0 on left and on the right. This is called a short exact sequence. Short exact sequence. Sequence. Okay, next. Okay, so now we know what is exactness for sequence. What about exactness for functor? And then the exactness. Then if we know what is exactness for functor, we will know what is exactness for the tensor product. Because you can see the tensor product as a bifunctor, just bi-exact. Okay, so what is the definition of exactness for a functor? Let's see B2. So B2 abelian So you consider an additive functor. We define what is additive functor. So an additive functor f from C to D is called a left exact if for every short exact sequence like that, so in C, then the sequence so only on 0 on the left, f of x, f of y, f of z is exact in D. So you see, we don't write 0 here. This is left exact. So right exact will be with the 0 on the right and not on the left. You can ask yourself, what's the point of defining left and right exact? We just need to an exact with 0 on left and on the right, but in fact, we will need this distinction. We will need such a subtleties. So idem means the same. Idem for right exact. So same thing. So right exact, you have like that. So I don't write the details, which is the same, is exact in D. Okay. And as you can expect, the functor is exact if it is both left and right exact. A functor is called exact if it is both left and right exact. This is not readable. Exact. Okay. Again, for contravariant functor, so above functor f is covariant by default, which means it's covariant without mentioning it is covariant. Covariant means it keeps the arrow, the orientation of the arrow. Covariant. But we can define the notion of contravariant exact functor, left or right. Idem for contravariant. Where we have when we reverse the arrow. And when you can put or not 0 or not for being left and right, etc. So okay. So what now we can state a proposition so connection between left adjoint and adjoint and exactness. Adjoint of functor and exactness of functor. So the left adjoint the left adjoint of any functor. So what is funny here? You take any functor. So a functor, in general, a functor is not exact, it's not left or right exact. But you take any functor and you take its left adjoint, and then this left adjoint will be right exact. So you win a property by taking the adjoint. So the left adjoint of any functor between abelian category is right exact. That is funny. And idem. The right adjoint of any functor between abelian category is left exact. So I may write that here. Is left exact. And recall what we define about left adjoint. So if F is the left adjoint of G, then G is the right adjoint of F by definition. By definition. And so, in fact, using the previous proposition, we can see that if a functor, so you use the previous proposition, and this recall. If a functor has a left adjoint, then this left adjoint is right exact, but it's also a right adjoint of its left adjoint, so it is left exact. So left adjoint is right exact, but itself is left exact. So if a functor has a left adjoint, then it is left exact. This is the point here. So a functor with a left adjoint is left exact itself. A functor with a right adjoint is right exact itself, and a functor with a left and right adjoint, not necessarily the same, is exact itself. Okay. So it's good because we know that the tensor product define a functor, and we know that this is related to left. This is related to left adjoint and right adjoint. So this would be useful to prove that the tensor functor is exact. Be exact, in fact, if you consider the tensor by the tensoring on the right or on the left, by exact. So now we can come back. So this is again the end of this recall about abelian category. So let us come back. Let us come back to tensor category. So proposition. Let C be a rigid monoidal abelian category. So for example, multitensor but not necessarily, this is more general. Then the bifunctor given by the tensor product is exact in both factors. Another, which is called bi-exact. In both factors mean you can tensorize on the left or on the right, and it's exact. Bi-exact. Exact. Okay. So this was proved in the last semester. So next, lemma. So a lemma about abelian category. Let CD be abelian category. Categories. Let an exact functor. So you take an exact functor, then this functor is additive. And so the corollary of the previous proposition and lemma, corollary, let C be a rigid monoidal category, abelian category, monoidal abelian category. Then the bifunctor is B-additive. So why I am writing that? So why we are writing that? Because we prove that rigid monoidal abelian is sufficient to prove B-additive. But in the definition of tensor category, it's not just B-additive, it's B-linear. The bifunctor is B-linear on the morphism. So the point here is that we can prove B-additive, but we cannot prove B-linear. You have example for such category C. The tensor product is not always bilinear. So, no redundancy in the definition of multi-tensor category. And here is the example, the counterexample of something which is rigid monoidal abelian but not bilinear. Example. So let C be the C linear abelian semi-simple category of C bimodule generated by the two simple objects, the following two simple objects. So you have the trivial, where the bimodal structure AB, so there are A and B, or bimodal structure A, Z, B. And you have the second object C minus, such that the bimodal structure involves the conjugate, the complex conjugate, and not that they coincide over R, because over R the complex conjugate is the identity. So this is an example. This is rigid monoidal abelian, but not bilinear. In fact, it's bilinear over the real, but not over the complex. The usual tensor functor for bifunctor, for bimodule, make C a rigid monoidal category, abelian category, abelian category, abelian category. Then it is R bilinear, R linear, bilinear, but not C bilinear. So that is why we need to put the bilinear assumption in the definition of a multi-tensor category. Now, we can make the definition, we can provide a weaker version of multi-tensor category, which is called multi-ring category. And this will deal with the exactness and previous proposition. A multi-ring category is a categorification, can be seen as a categorification of the notion of ring in algebra. A multi-ring category is, as for multi-tensor category, but, and the difference is here, but with where rigid is replaced by the strictly weaker assumption the tensor product by exact. So you replace rigid by the fact that the tensor product is by exact. We know that rigid imply, so we know that the tensor product is by exact for multi-tensor category, but it's strictly weaker. And strictly weaker because we will provide an example. We see why. See here why by this example. Example. So let M be a monoid. The category vec M of finite dimensional K vector space graded by M. So I don't recall that. Vec M as defined before is a ring category. But it is rigid if and only if M is a group. So if M is not a group, then this is not rigid. So this can be by exact and not rigid. So this is why this is strictly weaker. So you see the subtleties: monoid, group, rigid, by exact, etc. So it remains 5 minutes. Oh, maybe I can finish everything. Let's try to finish. So definition. What is the definition about? Quasi-tensor functor. So a weaker version of tensor functor. So let's see D B, multi-ring category over a field K. Let F from C to D, you take an exact and faithful K-linear functor. B, an exact. We know what is exact, we know what is faithful. We define that in the section about recall on category theory. K-linear functor. So F is called a quasi-tensor functor. Quasi-tensor functor if there is natural isomorphism G from so this functor to that. If if we also want that the image of the one is 1, but without monoidal structure axiom. So just that without monoidal structure axiom. In the previous course, there is also the monoidal structure axiom to be a tensor functor. So such FG is a tensor functor if it is a monoidal functor 2, which means monoidal structure axiom. Monoidal structure axiom. Removing the ambiguity with associativity constraint. Commuting diagram. Commuting diagram involving associativity constraint. Okay. Like that. Okay. Last point. I will. I will take a few minutes. Write this last point. Before the end. Example. The identity functor from vec G omega 1 to vec G omega 2 is quasi-tensor it is tensor if and only if omega 1 is equivalent to omega 2 as a 3 cocycle. In other words, these two categories are equivalent. And the last proposition of today. So this is a good example to see in what sense this notion are admit example. So you take two morphisms in a multi-ring category, category C, then it's okay. The image deal with correctly with the direct sum. The image of the direct sum of morphism is the direct sum of the image. So that's good. Okay. So this was the end of the summary of session 15. So next time, we will start with the summary of last semester's session 16. So see you next time. So because of holiday, Monday is holiday. Monday is holiday. Thursday. Monday is holiday. So the next time is Thursday. Okay. So we'll stop here.